Well, welcome to week 13 of class. I'm sure you know as well as I do how close we are to the end. Um, as always, I have a whole lot of business kind of opening things to say. I wrote them all out here so you wouldn't forget. Like last week, I'll share this video on Canvas and I'll share this document on Canvas if we kind of like type more stuff into it. You can see the only way you really need to get ready for anything is just to have a Google Doc open, maybe even the draft of Essay 3, because I want to play with Google Docs a little bit later on. So as always in Zoom, I would love you to interrupt me if anything goes wrong. If you don't hear me for a second, because my Wi-Fi isn't always great, someone say something out loud or in the chat type, "We can't see you, Dr. Seven, we can't hear you." It's always okay to interrupt. It's always okay to use your mic, or it's okay to chat. So I feel really flexible about how to do this, and I hope you do too. So please don't let me just ramble on forever. Let me dive into these though. One, I added a new video link to our Canvas page way up at the top. It's way up here. What this is it's a short video that I and the 6 students who work in the Writing Center made together. Essentially, we got on Zoom and each of us got 3 minutes to tell stories about times that we've felt writing anxiety and all the different ways that it rears its head. And we then talked about some of the ways that we deal with it. So it's not necessarily that we can solve all your problems, but it is like hey, we're 6 people who write a lot and we've got some ideas. So maybe you can be inspired by our ideas. If you check it out, you'll see that it is 20 minutes long. It's not short, and it's essentially just us like talking over a Google slideshow. You know, Stephanie tells her story, Celia tells her story, Kim tells her story, etc. And so if it were me, I would just kind of turn it on and just watch it in the background sometime. If you're doing dishes and you have it on your phone, fine. You don't really have to look at much. But I know that we've had a lot of people come to the Writing Center lately who are really freaking out. Not just about COVID, not just about their writing, but kind of like feeling really anxious in a lot of ways. That's really natural and normal, and everyone, including me, feels that when we have tasks that we have to face. So I really encourage you to check that out. If we actually met 3 days a week like we should be in a normal semester, I'd like take the 20 minutes and show it to you in class. I just can't right now because of how weird this is. So just so you know, that's there. Hopefully you saw my announcement on Monday about how we're doing peer review this time. It's like last time where if you do peer review of other people's essays, whether or not your essay is one of the ones getting review, you could get up to 5 points of extra credit on your Essay 3 final grade. That's a big deal. It's a lot. I only am doing that during COVID times. If you're curious, go to this week down in week 13, and it tells you about how we're doing it. Let me remind you that I've mentioned this. I know you've gotten a lot of emails from me the last couple of weeks. There's 2 times where I'm really expecting to get contacted, usually by email. Of course, it's always okay to chat on Discord too. One, if you turn anything in after the post deadline, I really appreciate a quick little heads up. Sometimes that can even be like a comment on the submission when you send it. That sends me an email, just like hey, just so you know, this is a little late because of this. I don't need to know everything. I don't need to know everything about your life. You can say, it's late because of a private matter. But that shows me a little bit that you're kind of recognizing it. I'm not taking points off for late, you know that, but I like to have conversations about it too. I also think you should contact me if you turn something in and you need my feedback before you can proceed. Sometimes I miss that when things come in a little late. Like, so for instance, if you turn something in on that very first discussion board where you read that Marjorie Stewart essay about the personal and the public, and you're like, I'm waiting for him to tell me if my idea is any good or not, and he hasn't responded yet. Sometimes it's just off my radar if it comes in not at the time that I was expected. So always reach out to me and say, hey, Dr. Zim, I could use some help, just so you know. Next, you saw my announcement on Monday, which mentioned the peer review. It also mentioned that I was worried about quite a few of you. As you saw, that there are quite a few people who are not attending class and not watching the videos, and those are usually the same people I suspect who aren't turning things in, who aren't contacting me, who are just kind of ghosting class. I don't know what I can do besides kind of send emails, send academic alerts, and give you bad grades. I really don't want you to get bad grades. To get to RHET 102, you have to get a C, not a C minus. You have to have a C. So if you're like signed up for RHET 102 and your grades are like below a 74 right now, you are at risk of the possibility of getting an email from the school over winter break saying, you signed up for RHET 102, but you're not allowed in yet. So please, please, please don't let that happen to you. That's a important actual thing. Two ways I want to show you. I kind of want both of us to take steps toward each other here in this difficult time. So I have two ways that I'm going to take steps towards you. Of course, I need you all to take steps towards me. I know I'm talking to the choir here because you're the ones who are in class. I'm really talking to the ones who aren't probably watching this. I get it. But I am going to bump the due date of essay 3. I've been going back and forth. I decided this morning. Right now, if you look in Canvas, you see the old thing. It says that it's actually due a week, in 5 days from now, like this coming Monday, November 16th. I'm going to bump that and ask you to turn it in the Monday before Thanksgiving instead. And that might make you say, well, wait a minute, don't we have like a final portfolio due? How are we going to have time for the portfolio? Well, that means that I'm also going to have to adjust that final reflection activity. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to do that, but before I was going to ask you to make a website. I'm not going to ask you to make a website anymore. On that website, I was going to ask you to like write a final reflection essay. I'm not going to ask you to do that. I'm probably going to do something like ask you to make like a selfie video and submit that. I want you to do the reflection. You know how much I care about that. I want you to say, I've gone back and looked at all my essays and I have some thoughts about how I've grown and how I haven't and how I want to grow in the future. That's all great. And I really want you to do that, but I don't need you to do that in writing. So I'll guide you through that. You'll hear more about that next week. But just so you know, you'll start seeing some due dates change probably later today on Canvas. So if you're looking right now as of 10 a.m. on November 11th, don't trust the dates that you see there. Does that make sense? Everything up to there? Any questions about that stuff? Gives me to pause and take a drink from my awesome Star Wars cup. Okay, 2 more quick things. I do want to ask the 5 of you to do a quick vote here. I was hoping we'd have more. Oh no. You know that when I decided to go Zoom these 2 weeks, weeks 12 and 13, I said week 14 we'd be back to class as usual. That was because partly nostalgic, partly like I miss you all, partly because I think a lot of you do better with the face-to-faceness, like the having people there to kind of keep you accountable a little bit. Partly because I was going to ask you to make a website, and I thought that I should be there to like look over your shoulder and say, hey, here's how to make a website. Since I'm no longer going to ask you to make a website, and because our COVID rates are so freaking high right now in Winnebago County, part of me is thinking maybe we should just stay home. Maybe we shouldn't meet again face to face. I'm personally kind of on the fence, and I would love feedback. I will open a poll in a second, but before that, can I just ask, like, do you all have a strong opinion? Should we meet in person next week, or should we Zoom just on Wednesday again? Any thoughts? I'm going to pause awkwardly long in case anyone's typing in the chat, but you can also say it out loud if you want.
I think usually I like to do in-person class, but given what you kind of said about the high rates of COVID, and I feel like for some people it might be easier just to stay home since we're not doing the website anymore. I don't think we're doing anything that requires us to I know I'm a visual learner, so at least for me, I like to see stuff, but I don't think we're doing anything that really requires us to be in class. So I feel due to COVID, I feel maybe on Zoom might be a little better.
I appreciate that. I see Dayon is typing in the chat that he says the same thing due to COVID. That's helpful. Other 3, I'm going to pause a second in case you have an opinion one way or the other. Let me go ahead and do a poll here. I'm going to go ahead and launch this. Go ahead and vote on one of those, please. Hopefully you see it pop up. Shall we meet in class next week? I don't know what the people watching the video will see. So I got 3 out of 5 votes. I don't know. It's anonymous, so I don't know who did what. There's 4. So I'll give it a couple more seconds for the last person to get a vote in. Doesn't that always kind of worry you? And you're like, oh, there it is. Okay. All 5 of you voted, let's continue to meet on Zoom. So um, let's say that that is what's highly likely. Wait for an email to like 100% confirm that, but let's say right now that that is probably what we'll do. Thank you for that feedback. Finally, let me remind you a little of where we've been for this essay 3, because I think that helps me kind of go back. I do this every week before class. I'm like, what do we know? What do we need to know? What have I seen in the writing so far? And you can kind of see we started way back in week 10 talking about strong ideas, which is one of the rubric scores. We talked about how to organize it, thinking about various kinds of methods. That was week 11. And of course, I'm partly telling you so you can go back to Canvas if you're like feeling like your ideas are bad or your organization's bad. You can go back to the notes or the videos from that week. We talked last week about how to write strong sentences. We got into grammar and punctuation and style a lot. And this week, I want to finish something we didn't talk much about last week, just for 10 minutes, how to do links in the way I want you to. And then when I've been reading some drafts, I haven't finished reading all the drafts that have come in so far, but the ones I've seen, I get the sense that you're kind of struggling with intros and conclusions. How in the world are you supposed to do that? So really, that's really kind of the main point of the second half of class. That's where we're going to go. So let's just dive in to adding links before we kind of get to this intro conclusion stuff. And I just decided to search like for a random online article to show you a little bit of what I'm thinking of. You've seen articles online. This is just a random one that came out today, right? About Trump and the election. Sorry if you're sick of all that. And I feel like when you read articles these days, you constantly see stuff like this, right? You see, let me just read the sentence, right? Most Republican senators, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, won't yet acknowledge that President-elect Joe Biden won. And you can imagine a reader saying, wait a minute, who says that they won't acknowledge? How do you know that? How can you prove that? So the writer of this article, Andrew Prokop, decided to say, hey, there's a link to, and you can see in the bottom left when I hover over it, another Vox.com article from yesterday. You can see that in the link, 11/10/2020, specifically kind of proving that according to them, another article on their same site, that's what happened. You said, and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Tuesday, and you're like, did he really say that? Is this article just making that up? Well, if you hover over it, you can see it's linking you specifically to C-SPAN's Twitter, where it's like proof of him saying that. So we see this all the time these days, right? People back themselves up and anticipate possible questions people might have, and prove that they're doing the right thing by adding links. Now, you know that most of the time in academic writing, you don't do that. Most of the time in academic writing, you see like a little parenthetical citation, and then you see like a works cited page at the end, a references page at the end. And I know that that is a value in a lot of the classes you'll have. And honestly, in RHET 102, when I teach it, when anyone teaches it, how to do those academic citations is huge. You get tons of experience and practice writing those. Part of me is like, why bother? Some of you have had experience with teachers who are asking you to do that right now or in high school. Some of you are like, I don't even know what you mean by academic citation. So I kind of am like, let's take a little pause and learn how to cite like this. Let's learn how to cite in a way where whenever we rely on a source, whenever we expect that a reader might want to see where we got that info, we can just add a little link instead. It's actually really easy. So let me show you the technical side of how to do it, and I've already kind of explained some of the rhetorical side, like to prove that your sources are valid by letting readers check them. Also, like to smoothly let readers kind of zoom past the citation without a big, bulky, annoying parentheses to slow them down. That's honestly part of it. The technical side is, in my mind, is really easy, and I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I say this right. I mean, essentially, like this works in Google Docs and it works in Word. And I know I showed this really fast last time. I'm going to actually ask you to do it in your own Google Doc that you've got open. You highlight words, you right-click the words, and we'll talk in a second about what exactly should you highlight. If you're on a Mac, you don't right-click, you command-click, just so you know. And then you look for something like add link. The phrasing will be different depending on what program you're using. And then you paste in the link. So let's just give it a shot in Google Docs really quick. So if this is my link, uh, and I can copy it by right-clicking or Control-C, I type some words, in a recent article on Vox.com, what's this guy's name? I don't care right now. And I'm like, all right, let's make a recent article on Vox.com. I'll right-click it. I'll choose link. You can see I could also do Control K if I want. I paste in what I just did. I use Control V. I could have, if I didn't want, I could right click and paste and apply, and bam, all of a sudden that's a link. That's what I'm asking you to do, actually requiring you to do for your next essay. So I want in a second to like force you to do that, but let me give you a couple tips first about ways to do that right. I wrote a little bit about like the big picture rhetorical side, but there's also the what words do you highlight? And I would say the key is readers should know where they're going before they click. I often see people kind of pick the wrong things to highlight in a way that doesn't make it very clear. Like check out our example. I don't know exactly where I'm going with won't yet acknowledge, right? But I know the kind of thing I'm going to get. I know I'm going to a place that proves it. Mike Pompeo said Tuesday. I know I'm going to go to a place where he said this Tuesday. The next one, it says, though perhaps he was joking. And I assume that's going to take me to an article. Let's just try it. That kind of suggests that maybe somewhere in here he's kind of joking. Who knows exactly where? I don't know if you saw this clip. It's really interesting. Right after Pompeo says there'll be a second Trump administration, he kind of smiles. And a lot of news sources have been like, well, that smile kind of makes you wonder if it's a joke. So here it's talking about the joke. We know this article is going to talk about a joke because that's what the link kind of suggested. So you notice they're not like super detailed, and yet there isn't like kind of a random where in the world are we going. So I actually think we could even be a little bit more detailed than that. So my suggestions are one of these phrases, and this is what I'm going to ask you to do in a second. Choose one of these three. I really like the idea of like according to. I should have italicized this earlier. According to the website name in italics, because that's how you do website names, and then you kind of say this. So I would think that you could highlight all of according to Vox. I think that whole thing would make a good highlight. Notice I didn't do the punctuation. That's me getting a little picky. This won't affect your grade, but in general, you don't include the punctuation. So maybe you'll do that according to site. And if you have a site, you capitalize the main letters of it and you italicize it. Maybe another one is if you want to give the article title, because sometimes that's kind of useful, right? In this one, I'm kind of avoiding the title. But what if I'm like, oh, my reader needs to know the title of this article is like kind of this big, long thing. So what if I do that? In an article called, I'm gonna paste that title, and you see it got all messy. So I'm gonna click this little thing and just include the text. An article called this. Now this is actually kind of annoying. I have to turn those into capital letters because it's a title now. I know Vox didn't capitalize them, but in my MLA essay I'm supposed to. I actually think I should do is. Yeah, maybe not. An article called this. Here's what comes next. Annoying, right? Who's the author here? Andrew Prokop claims. If I did that, I could just highlight this entire thing and make that entire title a link. So let me do that super fast. So you can kind of see, I know it's long and annoying, but you can kind of see how much readers know where they're going. In the first one, they know they're going to an article at Vox. In this one, they know they're going to an article with that title when they click it, right? There's no doubt at all. So the first one is like mentioning the site. The second one is mentioning the title. The third one could be just like mentioning where you found it, because sometimes that's good enough. Like maybe you wrote like in a blog post, which I found on Twitter. I guess I should italicize Twitter. This author claims. So I would do. This is really important here. I would highlight the phrase on Twitter. I wouldn't highlight the word Twitter, because I think if the word Twitter is linked, people think that they're just going to go to twitter.com, right? But if I'm looking for like a specific tweet, like I need to go to Twitter and like find that actual tweet. Here's one, and like link to that actual tweet. So I found this on Twitter, link, here's the tweet. I guess I should have read it before I linked to it, who knows. So let me just pause for a second and ask you to give that a shot. Try in your essay itself, or if you don't have it, just like write a sentence and try to take a source that's on the topic of your essay, or maybe even a source you're actually using, and try writing the sentence that includes a link like this. I know some of you already did this in your drafts, but a lot of you didn't yet. And make that choice. Do you think it's best for people to know the site it came from? Is it best for them just to know the title, or is it best for them to know where you got it? Feel free to follow my sentence structure and my commas and everything, but I'll be quiet and I'll just kind of leave this up while you do that in another window, and then I'll kind of ask how it went. So take 2 minutes.
So when you did this, when you did like the Twitter link, did you just get the link from? Can you show me how you did that again?
Yeah, I did it really fast. I'm sorry. So the way Twitter specifically works is like if you want to link to a specific tweet, you actually click the timestamp. You know, it says like this was tweeted 31 seconds ago. Um, oh, sorry, my browser is freezing here. Give us a second to kind of come back. Here we go. You know, this was tweeted 1 minute ago. This was tweeted 16 hours ago. So like if you want to get a link to a tweet, you have to click the timestamp. And then you get a special URL that takes you just specifically to that tweet. Um, it's just kind of like a weird Twitter trick. So if I want to link to it, that's what I copy. But I first have to like click the timestamp to get to that specific tweet, right? Is that what you were asking? Like how to find the URL, like what to click to?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other questions or issues that came up as you were trying to do that? Let me tell you the way this will affect your grade. If you highlight the wrong words, if I'm a little confused, if your sentence is awkward, that's not really going to hurt you very much. What I really want to see, you know, because you're learning something new probably, right? What I want to see is that you're trying. If I see that you gave an attempt at linking at least twice, remember two outside sources are required, uh, then I'll grade your evidence score as I normally would. Kind of, are you doing the quote sandwich? Are you introducing your sources well? Are you balancing what you found from other sources with your own ideas? All the stuff it says on the rubric. But if I see you kind of mention things without linking, if there are a lot of places where I'm like, clearly you looked that up, but you were not in any way acknowledging that you looked that up, that's going to really cap your evidence score. You know, you might, the highest you'll be able to get is like a C on the evidence score or something. So it could hurt your essay. So in other words, try, great, I'll be super lenient. Don't try, ew, that's weird, hurt your evidence score. So with that, I kind of want to, oh, sorry, I see a question in the chat. So we don't have to include a references page when we link to sources, says Dayan. That is correct. I do not want or expect a references or works cited page. In my mind, this takes the place of it. like instead of, because what a references page is it's assuming that someone is like looking at a piece of paper, and they're like, oh, on this piece of paper I can't click the link to go to the website, so I'll get all that information in kind of a standard format sort of way so I could look it up on my own later. Well, you're submitting this as Google Docs. I'm going to read these on the computer, not on paper. So why kind of double do the same thing? Why not just give me the same info in the simpler, smoother way, so that you can practice that formal academic way in a later class? If you do the link well and you have a works cited or reference, I'm not going to take points off, but you certainly don't need to. I do not care for it. Well, I'm going to like totally shift gears for these last 20 minutes if you guys are okay. Dancing in my chair. Sweet. I want to talk intros and conclusions. Like I said, I've noticed some struggles with that, and I think the struggles make sense. I've been thinking about why are introductions hard to write, and I think one of the reasons is because they try to do so many things at once. And one resource I've been turning to is UNC Chapel Hill's page on introductions. Let me show you on um, back on Canvas. Under today, under week 13, I gave you a link to a page on intros, a page on conclusions. It'll look like this. I love this site. I've mentioned it before in class. They have so many good tips on various kinds of writing. I almost think of this as like our textbook, since we don't have a textbook in this class. And you can see I kind of highlighted a couple things. When they're saying like, why bother to write a good introduction? They're like, well, you're trying to make a first impression. That is true. Even though I know you, you're kind of say like, hey, Dr. Stedman, look how much I got this pulled together for this essay. But of course, we don't always share just for your professor. Sometimes you're sharing with other people too. But you're also trying to tell your reader, here's what I'm talking about. Kind of here's what my thesis is. Here's why my topic's important. And here's how I'm going to proceed. Here's kind of the order of what's coming up. And at the same time, I'm not just trying to do that in a boring way. I'm trying to make them want to read. For me, that's so intimidating. Like, how am I supposed to like have all of this? Here is what readers might expect they want to know. Here's what I'm expecting they might be wondering. But also to do that in a way that is engaging and interesting and grabs them and makes them get the first impression that I want to give. It's hard. That's why, as you've heard me say plenty of times, that's why I'm always a fan of multi-paragraph intros. I do sometimes think it makes more sense to do the grab attention stuff first, and then do the, now that I got your attention, let me tell you what I'm up to, and let me tell you what I'm going to try to persuade you of in this essay. And here's kind of my thesis of how I'm going to get you to that point. So this page, which I'm not going to require, but I strongly recommend, it goes through a few strong suggestions of what you can do in essays and a few strong suggestions of what not to do. And what I did is I kind of typed those in a really quick summary here. So what I'm going to do is just give me 2 minutes to do the ultra fast summary of these points. And then I want to actually show you an introduction and ask your opinions on what we could do to improve it. So the interesting thing about this site is when they talk about what you should do, you see a lot of interesting adjectives. You should have an intriguing example. You should use a provocative question. You should use a puzzling scenario, vivid, and perhaps unexpected. Here's the thing. I know I've written intros in the past that kind of pretend to be intriguing, provocative, puzzling, vivid, or unexpected, but everyone knows I'm just faking it. I don't know if you've been there. I don't know if you've ever been like, oh yeah, my teacher said maybe I should like ask a question. So sure, I'll start with a question. And so you start with the most boring question of all time. Have you thought about how COVID is affecting people's lives? Oh my gosh, do you really think in November of 2020 I haven't thought about how COVID is affecting? Maybe a scenario, you're like, oh, I know, a puzzling scenario. Picture a college student who's going to college for the first time and it's their freshman year, and all of a sudden COVID hits. Don't you think that's going to affect them? Yes, I do. Yes, I do think that. So I think sometimes we do this thing, which the site calls a placeholder, where we kind of don't have anything interesting to say yet. So we just put something there because we're like, I don't know, I need to write my intro first for some reason. And I think what we have to do often is write the essay and then go back and insert actually intriguing, provocative, puzzling, vivid, and unexpected things. I'm not saying that's easy, but sometimes we have to do that test of like, what would actually make people interested? Like actually for real. the examples they give is an example, maybe like a story or scenario. Since your essay has to have the personal mixed with the public, we talked a couple weeks ago about maybe starting with that personal story. Who knows? Uh, they they on that site distinguish between just kind of that random kind of silly question to like an actually provocative question. Like, I don't know, maybe like I don't know if I can do it off the top of my head. Something. Hey, you all have been thinking about COVID for the last 7 or 8 months. You've all faced it, and I'm sure you thought about how college students have this problem. But have you thought about this aspect of what it's like uh, to be a college student with COVID, which isn't in the news anywhere? If you've actually got something that we're like, oh my gosh, that really is real. Uh, so I don't think I need to prove that to you. I think you understand. Um, I think some of the advice about what not to do is almost better. Uh, Besides just having a placeholder, often I'll see people kind of just restate the question. In this assignment, for instance, if I go back to essay 3, uh, write an essay that seeks to persuade your readers to change your attitudes or actions on a topic that's read. It's not uncommon that I would see an essay that in the intro it says, in this essay, I'd like to persuade you to change your attitudes or actions on a topic related to my personal experience. Like literally like almost like a plagiarized version of the assignment itself. I think when we don't know what else to say, we kind of pop that in. Um, it's very common for people to be like, I know, I need a source. Maybe the dictionary. I'll just find like a random thing. In an essay like this, the dictionary doesn't really have any authority. Like, so what the dictionary says? Who really cares? Um, um, by the way, I see Edith is asking if this doc is going to be available. Yes, I'm going to upload this to week 13 this afternoon when I upload the videos to YouTube. It'll be up by 1 or 2 p.m. The fourth suggestion they say to avoid is kind of this dawn of man. It's really common for people to say, well, I've been taught that introductions should start broad and then get more and more and more specific, right? So maybe I need to start really broad. Like, there have always been diseases in the world, people will say, to which I'm always like, why ever write a sentence that everyone knows? But there have always been diseases in the world since the dawn of man. Since the beginning of time, there have been diseases. There have also been ways that people have come together to fight diseases. One way that people have fought diseases has been trying to find a solution to the COVID problem. That leads me to my actual topic. Often I'm kind of like, I read intros from first drafts and I'm like, you should just cut your first 5 sentences because it's taking you so long to get to what you're actually saying. And finally, they define the book report introduction as kind of like, when you're in 5th grade and you're writing like an essay about lobsters and you're like, lobsters are crustaceans. Lobsters live in the sea. I researched lobsters by going to the World Book Encyclopedia. In this essay, I will tell you about lobsters. And sometimes even academic college essays kind of feel like that. So let me kind of be quiet and leave those don'ts visible, um, and ask you what you would say to the student who wrote this. I'm actually pretending it's not actually by a real student, but let's pretend it's by a student. And let's say the student is your friend. He comes up to you and is like, hey, this essay from Dr. Stedman is killing me. Here's my intro. What do you think? So let me give you a second to read it, and then let's talk about it either by talking out loud or by chatting. I'll say that even though I wrote this, this is very similar to a lot of first draft essays, first draft intros I see. So I don't know, what do you want to call? Let's call him Ron. What do you want to say to your friend Ron who wrote this? Any advice?
I feel like in a way, kind of like started with one idea and
Mhm.
then switched to another and then kind of like stuck with the second idea, I guess you could say. So, I guess it's like not straight to the point in a way. So I feel like you can make things a little more concise.
Yeah. So what do you think, either Edith or anyone else, what do you think Ron is writing about? Like what do you think Ron's argument is? Like what's going to come up in the future?
This is supposed to be persuasive essay, right?
It absolutely is. Yeah.
So I feel like he doesn't really give a side of his argument. So like when he's like he says he's going to share his thoughts on international students and how they're being discussed in the news, but like he doesn't say whether the things being discussed are good things or bad things and what's his point of view. He kind of just kind of leaves it there and you kind of got to assume based off the rest of his essay.
Yeah, I like you pointing out the my thoughts on phrase. That's almost keyword for I don't know what I'm actually arguing yet. So I'm kind of like, does Ron not know yet, or does he just not like think how different that sentence is from like uh whether you're a student, staff, or faculty at a university, you can you can support international students better. Uh, I'll I'll convince you of that, but convince you to support them this essay by suggesting you blank and I don't know. It's not the best sentence, and it's a little. I know sometimes people say you shouldn't be this obvious. This is what I'm doing in this essay. Sometimes I think you got to be that clear. But compared to the like, hey, just gonna share some thoughts. I'm just gonna talk about it. You know, it's just on my mind. That's less good than the tone of this one, which is like you can do this. I will convince you to do this. Often the word should shows up. Um, Students should take these actions. Readers should change their minds in the way that I want you to. That's the biggest problem with this intro. Personally, anything that doesn't help that, anything that is just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm just going to talk about universities. Got a quote from the dictionary. You know, and by the way, people meet at universities. By the way, some of them are international. By the way, I've met some international students. Like it's just kind of like I kept thinking, like, why are you telling me this? So what? So what would you tell him? What would you suggest to Ron? I mean, I think it's got to go. I think it's like it's not like fiddle with a couple sentences. It's like Ron, delete that sucker and try again. What would you tell him if he's like, I don't know what to do better? Uh, I see Dayon saying, sorry, this emoji keeps coming up. uh, I would ask what he wants to argue and state it directly and then work around that. I like that, kind of starting with what's your main point? Like, what's going to make people realize that they should take some action? Um, I don't know. I always think of the personal story thing. Um, what if instead it starts with like, uh, how could we do it? I guess I'm just making up a story. Like, uh, my roommate, um, you know, is from China, and she told me the wildest story the other day about how hard her life has been at Rockford University. Again, maybe not the best sentence, but you know, something that's like making us we're kind of, oh my goodness, what is the story? As opposed to like, did you know that some students at Rockford University are from China? I I'm going to perk up a little more at this. Um, I don't know. I've been watching Schitt's Creek a little bit. I don't know if you've seen this on Netflix. And there's a couple times in the first season where the parents are trying to talk to the children in the other room, and they say, David, Alexis, get in here, and they don't come. They just ignore it. But when they say, Oh my goodness, and what happened to her next? Or how disfigured is she? Phew, they show up at the door. They're like, wait, what happened? We don't have to be that dramatic and that obvious, but a little bit of that technique can be in our interest, you know. So it's a mix, right? What we're talking about here is both the grabbing the attention, but also being clear about what's coming up. I shouldn't get past your first page without knowing what you're trying to persuade me of. I really think that. I know we're running out of time. I am watching the clock. Uh, let me say a couple things about conclusions, just to kind of go there. Again, they have suggestions about what you should and shouldn't do. I'm not going to read through those just because of time. But a couple of these I think are especially common and especially worth talking about. I think this is from me. I do think conclusions are really hard, especially if you're like, I'm just writing this essay because my professor made me. And if you don't really have an investment in like why you really actually care about this, I get it. Of course, it's hard to kind of conclude and make it feel wrapped up, make it feel like the door clicks shut at the end of your essay. And of course, if you don't know what your argument is, if you're like, let me just tell you about international students, you won't necessarily know either. So for me, I think the key, the best one of all of these is this play this so what game. And this is really related to a lot of these, like pointing to broader implications. Like, what if I say, well, if someone says to me, so what's the point of your essay? And I say, I want to tell you that international students have a hard time here. And I say, so what? Well, because if they're having a hard time here, that suggests that there might be like a structural issue at RU that we could solve better. Who cares? So what? That there's a problem at RU. Well, if structures are in place that don't support students, then what are we even doing here? Like, students are like the lifeblood of our school. We have to support them. Who cares? So what? Well, because universities are helping give the training and thinking that is going to inspire people to have the successful, engaged lives that they want the rest of their lives. You know, like can get bigger and bigger and more important. And I think conclusions are the place to say some of that stuff. Like I can not in that way necessarily. Like, your conclusion doesn't necessarily say, so what? This, who cares? You know, but some of your answers to those can go in your conclusion. Um, I think that sometimes that can get a little overblown. UNC has the wise suggestion that sometimes we can get very like, and we will fight for our international students, and we will combine our efforts. You know, it can start to sound like a speech in a way that sometimes is like, where did that tone come from? You weren't talking like this in the earlier. So be careful about that. The other one I see a lot is like, I don't know your thesis until the conclusion. They call that the Sherlock Holmes conclusion. You've been reading along, and the reader is like, what are you getting at? What do you want me to do? What are you really arguing here? And finally, in the end, they're like, here's my main point, finally, actually. So I did the same thing here. I wrote another lousy conclusion. Let me just give you 2 seconds to read it, and I'll say one thing about it, and then we'll get out of here.
A real quick question about
Oh, Tosh, give it just a second, all right? I want to hear it, but let me give a second to let people read that first.
okay.
Appreciate it. So just super fast, I tried to wrap all of these problems into here. I wrote a sentence that's kind of doing the Sherlock Holmes, I'm assuming like an essay that didn't make the main point till then. I'm doing a sentence that's like overblown, America the Beautiful, oh my goodness. I'm doing the like bringing in a fact that probably should have shown up everywhere earlier. Like, why is that all of a sudden popped up here? Shouldn't we even known that much earlier? And I'm also doing the kind of the very boring paragraph by paragraph restatement conclusion, which I don't think is necessary in a short essay like this. And instead of saying, I told you this, I told you this, I told you this, I told you this, tell us more like, all right, you know what I just told you. Let me now synthesize that into something interesting and more powerful at the end. Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted, Taj. I just want to make sure I said those things. What was your question?
So in my paper, I already started with my reference page.
Hmm?
Do you think I should? Do you like really care if we like add in the in text, links?
Um, I definitely care about the links. I definitely want to see you try that. Um, but I won't take points off for the reference page being there too.
Well,
Personally,
since I
I'll just ignore the references page. I'll be like, oh, they did that. Okay, that's nice, but that's not what we need.
okay, so okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for asking that. Um, I guess in my mind, if it feels hard, you might be overthinking it. I don't think it should be that hard to kind of find the link, right click, add it. But if it feels hard, let me know what feels hard about it, and I'll try to make that easier. So I know this is kind of all sorts of stuff. I know we're kind of moving all around different ideas. Let me just kind of remind you where we're at. What it says on here, which will change soon, it says this Monday, November 16th, submit the final version of the essay. Let me instead suggest that you try to do it the Monday before Thanksgiving. If you have it earlier, I have given some of you on this video. I've sent you your video responses. I'm going to do a couple more today. Uh, I'll do a few more tomorrow. But like, if you get that video and you're like, "Hey, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm just gonna roll with this right now." Um, that's fine. You can turn in your essay as early as you want. I'm also like not requiring peer review until a week from today anyway. So you might kind of wait and see like if you are in the peer review pool and you're getting peer reviews, you might want to see what you get from people and then kind of wait, another week till Thanksgiving week to turn it in. Um, but as always, you can keep asking me for more and more feedback, and I'll give you whatever I can. Always prioritizing the people who asked first. I'll respond in the order that I got questions. So with that, I hate to say it, but I've got to let you go. So I'm going to stop the recording, stop the share, and I will see you when I see you. Okay? Thanks for being awesome.